3d6 down the line. Okay, that is episode 53. Episode 53 in the books.
53.
Yeah, nice.
5-3.
Ted had to disappear. He's got a work engagement early in the morning, so he has to dip out and go to bed. And the rest of us will soon as well. But in the meantime,
likely story.
Great, very fun info-centric session today, which I thoroughly enjoyed.
A great NPC too.
Yeah, nice job.
Yeah, Sir.
And not only is he like a great individual character, but just the knowledge that there's this whole band of these guys out wandering around all over Arden Vool, just like, you know, being the watcher, right?
Like
just
Lone
like
Ranger and shit.
Yeah, I think the once again, it's, you know, they don't have a set plot here, obviously, for Arden Vool, which I love, but I think the general intent was that you would most likely encounter a Sunscarred Knight in one of the large gathering places where factions intermingle, like he sort of described. So I think it's actually kind of cool that you actually found one of the more he's not by nature reclusive, but just by circumstances happened to be sort of backed into a corner. You found one of the more rare knights to find, which is kind of cool.
On that point, it really reinforces. Unfortunate that the team is approaching from the one direction it shouldn't, but like it really enforces just how much getting to the set marketplace and getting into, like you said, these junctures of various factions that are within the dungeon, within the traffic of the dungeon, is important. Because like even outside of that, what occurs to me immediately in meeting a guy like this is like, it's good, obviously, when we're dungeoneering that we're not staying so long that random encounters are killing us. But it also is true that our like engagement with the dungeon is so finite that our sense of it as a living organism where other things traverse it is very limited, right? Like Plumthorn's Gang being an obvious one, but things like this, like things that would be moving around and trafficking and doing business and going through even the main entrance hall, right, regularly, are hard for us to perceive because we were just like in and out, you know, and surviving, you know.
Yeah.
So that's a very fun discovery. Go ahead, Mike.
But think about this, man. We've never actually run into like a merchant caravan just wandering through the dungeon or anything like that. Probably because we've never been in any of those locations where they would actually be able to travel. We've been to Gerlad's level, which he seems to have completely fucking locked down because he's a psycho. And then really the debouchement like level feels like it's almost like the surface scab, right? Like it's just, even though Gerlad's higher, you know, I get it, but it's just like Plumthorn's Gang did not feel like shakers and movers in AV. They felt like the guys who were just hanging on by their fingernails kind of thing, you know?
Right.
Yeah, it'll be cool to go down to those areas.
This is your first info dump, which should give you, it kind of gave you like the knowledge that there are well-established paths that support the larger economy of Arden Vool with its connections to the outer world, right? And that these are known and well-established. It's just for either circumstances of where you've been adventuring or questions that you have not asked. That's another part of it too. Like you just never bothered to ask Kronos, right?
If we could, if we could use his secret way,
or just
how to get to set. Yeah.
Well, yeah, just exactly. Like how you know? Do you know anything about the form of set, Kronos, and how we get there? Could have been as simple as that. You know what I mean?
Well, here we are. Hindsight. Yeah, but that's true.
Yeah, it's hindsight, of course.
I'm realizing. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm not saying you guys made a misstep. I'm just saying that circumstances just it's interesting because I didn't anticipate it. It's very fun to me to kind of see that after all this time, 53 sessions, you're getting your first intimation of that. You know what I mean? It's kind of mind-boggling. You know.
Well, if you think about it, like when we first started, we went, and maybe this is just like the nature of our group and the energy that we put into it. We tried really, really hard not to go the well-trodden path, right?
Yes.
Like we tried everything that we could, every little secret thing, and eventually we kind of gave up and went down the right. We kind of went down the main path there. But even so, like I think it's just like the psychology of our group is we love the secret stuff. If there's a well-worn path and the dusty path, we want to go down that dusty path. We'll poke things, we'll pull levers and end up, Mike, you pull the plunger. David, you jumped in the fire. I mean, we ended up in these, very, weird and secret places by the psychology of our group. That's just like what we like.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
true.
absolutely.
Yep. I brought this up when one of our breaks too, that it broke my heart in was it? No, I guess it was a couple sessions ago. But last time we were with a team, where you were in the Great Hall, and you were deciding where to go when the shit hit the fan with the Beastmen and the Gargoyles, and you didn't go through those double doors. It was just.
I said, I'm going to run through the double doors. I'm going to run through the double doors.
Yeah. I was like, oh, it's like
I was like,
so close.
It's too big of a. I know.
Yeah.
No, it's funny.
And I was saying during that break too that I had a strong feeling about those double doors, but then Ted was like, "Shelter in here," and ran down the other thing and didn't want to split the party again.
No, it's a natural thing. And I think to like go back to what John and Matt were both saying too about like how the sequence in which we engage with stuff. The beautiful and also the challenging thing of a really, really detailed space like this is that like our focal point will tend to be based upon most recent information, right? And like immediate goals, and we will tend to follow those. And it's hard to take a step back just with the organization of that information and go, oh, right, we never asked about set, right? Like, which seems obvious on the outside looking in, but with all of the other action occurring in front of us, it's a challenge to remember those things, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that's a good thing, right? Because it keeps things dynamic and interesting and makes every sort of party's approach, their own.
Well, as I've kind of tried to reinforce with you guys, and as you guys have been picking up on, information is power in this adventure, right? Big time. I think this is like one of the definitely highlight episodes where you can see very tangible effects of that, like very tangible. Like not only with Sir Simonit, but also with the goblins. The fact that you were now in a very rare circumstances in recent memory of Delve 3, aware of where you are. Right, you now have made a link up, which we know that's very satisfying when that happens, and I think it speaks to OSR playstyle in general, which is all about like asking questions, right? Always ask questions. It should be in the forefront of your mind at all times. Like, so if you kind of, I guess as advice, I guess in general for you guys is sort of, if you're in a bind and you don't know what to do, you should always be trying to search out more information from somebody, right? Like always be asking questions.
Not to contradict that, right? Though I guess I am. I agree, but because we're doing the detox, why not, right? This is some of the friction though that is embedded in just us recording our sessions, right? Which is in the early game, we were aware that like spending too much time on information gathering meant we weren't getting into the action. And that was a concern that we all voiced as players, being like, well, we kind of want to do something. We want to get in the dungeon, which is precisely why we're not asking about set, right? Because we're getting impatient with ourselves. And I think the degree in which like being conscious of, right, like our relationship with like an audience is part of that, right? Which is fine, right? Good.
I will say that I am impatient with an audience or without an audience. Like, I loved John's Charlton Heston, like weird demon knight guy. That was great. And I was just like, let's get the fuck going. Cause I'm just like, that's what I'm here for.
No. And when I mention it, I don't even mention it in the sense of like, it's substantially changing our behavior. Obviously we're playing as we normally would. We have the same personalities, like Mike said. Certainly I am similar to Mike in that degree, but I think it's a valid thing to acknowledge, right? Which is like information is power, but there's so much information that you could legitimately look for information forever in a space like this, right? Well, until you've concluded and until you've run out of things you could ask, but asking opens up more questions, right? So there is a balance there, I think, right? That's hard. That's just a challenge. That's all I'm saying. It's a challenge.
Yeah. Well, and I like hearing you say the word balance, because that's one of the things that I love about playing with you guys is, we do have like these stretching things, because hell, you put me with Charlton Heston, I'll just hang, not that me personally, I'm a fan, but I would hang out and talk with that guy and get as much as I could and just shoot the shit with him.
Yeah.
For way longer than you guys would have the patience for. But you'll get more information, and then you guys pulling will get us out of there before I just hang out and chat with this guy forever.
I think there's a balance too. Like you said, I think it's obviously I would get bored too with if you just sort of milked every possible last thing from any possible NPC, like asking about every faction possible. But I think first of all, if you don't ask questions, you will all die. Right. If you walk into a place with we've seen this in the Lost Chambers of Arden, places that you had no knowledge of, that it's a death trap, right? If you walk in there just blind, like, yeah, it's fun to go exploring and stuff like that. But if you don't have any, I don't know, you know what I mean? But then on the other side of things, I think that you probably want to focus the questions you have on your immediate goals in mind, right? So you don't have, like, Sir Simonette is obviously like a wealth of information. You are probably psychologically, maybe unconsciously, relieved the fact that there's a limitation to what he would tell you, right? Like you had to give him more. You're probably like, oh, sweet, good, all right. So we don't have to. I won't feel bad if we don't ask him every question because he's not going to answer every question, right? You know?
Well, and this circles back to exactly what I was saying before. Like, I'm not advocating we don't invest. I love investigating information, but like when I said before, when we were talking about like every group, when I said every group is going to have its own path, part of that is because in a space like a world design of this nature, there's a finite amount that we can track in our heads or that we can have patience for, right? And there is a point, like I said, in which you're going to follow the action in front of you, which is just what you confirmed, John. So the information we are going to ask about is going to be germane to the most actionable idea that we have in our mind, whether that be survival motivated or adventure motivated, which means like we're going to have blinders. We have to, because if we don't, we will be paralyzed by that,
yes,
right?
Totally,
but it means that we're always going to miss shit, even if we're smarter. We should know better, right? Like, which is not a bad thing. It's a fun thing, right? Because it leaves more to discover. And failure, even if it's informational failure, makes it more interesting. Forgetting stuff makes it more interesting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, like, thinking back to our early interactions with Kronos, the things that we were talking with him about were the things that we were desperately interested in right then. We wanted to screw with the plum thorns. We wanted, like, that's what was on our mind. That's what we wanted to do. We wanted to know, how are you guys interacting? What's the relationship there? How can we bypass this? How can we screw those guys? You know, we knew about Set, but that wasn't what we were interested in. That wasn't what we were planning to go do.
I do not like fault you for not asking about it. It's like I said, it's completely in retrospect that they may have been an option, right? But
nor did we take it as criticism. But Plumthorn was a perfect example because it is the antagonist of the moment, right? Like, and if access to the dungeon, if we failed to find the alternative entryways, right? Because we died a couple times, and we lost Osric, and then we lost Fargur. And we didn't only lose them, we lost them in such a severe fashion, right? The scale of those enemies seemed so beyond us that we went, oh shit, maybe we should use the main entrance. And then the middle and the main entrance, we found a faction that was antagonized, and we went, oh fuck, right? Like, but they're not killing us immediately, right? So we can try to then scheme against them, which is what we started doing. Right. Yeah. Like, and I mean, me and Mike, maybe more than everyone else, are like, fuck these guys. but like, that's the villain of the moment. Right. Like, and even if they're not bad guys, right, because we don't understand the factions yet, they are our roadblock in a way that like becomes compelling. Right. Like you said, frames how we engage.
I just want to say, like, one thing that makes it a little bit more realistic is that, John, you posted the adventurers map on the Discord this week. And it really highlights how little time has gone by. And we've talked about this in previous Discord.
Yeah.
But, you know, the thing is, we've really only interacted with Kronos like 3 or 4 times. And at no point was the market of Set like in our top 5. Yeah. And there's a paranoia of asking questions, revealing our own information, right? Like David has instilled that kind of paranoia in us all about not talking to people about stuff that we have. We really had no reason not to give Simonette more information about proboscis, right? It's
wow, love this fanfic.
Do you have? Oh, you know about the chamber,
about the vault, right?
Room,
so I was all for telling him about the vault in return for getting him to maybe escort us through some of these trials and tribulations that would get us back out of the dungeon, right? David's like, no way, whatever's in the vault is more valuable than anything he could possibly give us. And you're probably right.
I'm most certainly right. Sorry.
You can't spend wealth if you're dead. And when it comes down to it, like if I, Mike, were in a deep, dark hole in the ground and some like 7 foot tall guy in black armor is like, tell me what you know about proboscis and I'll let you out. I'd be like, hell yeah. He's 5'4". He's got a room right over there. There's like a vault. There's like a chessboard. You can go and go have fun with that.
But Mike, to your point, you could have lied to the guy and you didn't. He asked for information that he didn't know the answer to. We all could have deceived the guy and seen if he believed us, but that would be risking the relationship that you didn't want to do. I think you're right about the paranoia thing, and it's a push pull, like Matt said. We all have that different. I'm always going to take that tact though, because we know near nothing about any of these factions.
Well, because you're an untrustworthy bastard, right? Like if John had played, because you're an untrustworthy, like
that's not why. That's not why.
If John had played Lord Simonette or whatever his name is, and given him the same voice as Roger the Rapier,
we would have killed him.
No. It's not about John's performance. It really is there's a larger conversation here, which is that I think Arden as a world space is an incredibly neutral to chaotic world space. We've not because it is so about the competition of resource, right? Which is our first interaction as Kronos, who is withholding information and in deals with someone who is milking anyone who goes in. That does not make him a good or bad person any more than us. We talked about this on our private Discord. But it means everyone has got a game. Yes. And everyone is withholding information. And that is telegraphed to us from day one.
Yes, everyone has an agenda.
Like a bunch of rubes, giving every bit of information we have as if we're playing a 5e campaign where everyone's a golden knight giving us quests. We're fucking ourselves.
Man, that is a nugget of truth right there. Everyone out there, pay attention to what David just said.
This is what I'm saying. And to frame it, I love you, Mike, but to frame that as paranoia, in my opinion, is a really poor framework. And this has been, I love you guys, but a huge friction when I'm arguing against the group who is treating people we meet as a default trust source. And that happens a lot. We meet someone, we're excited about them. John does a really compelling performance. And then we're like, got to be a good guy. And I'm like, well, not necessarily. And that's not because I'm trying to not make us like them. It's because I'm like, we can't assume good is the neutral point. We have to assume neutral is the neutral point. And most fantasy adventures assume good is the neutral point. And like that's the key that I've tried to ingrain over and over again. But when I advocate that neutral is the thing, y'all are saying I'm advocating evil, and that's not what I'm doing. I'm saying neutral.
All it is
neutral is not trust, right?
Yeah, everyone has an agenda, basically, is what it is.
That's it.
You know what a good analogy that I just kind of thought about is, I don't know if you guys watch Survivor, but Survivor is very much in the similar vein where it actually is it's an amazing show because of the kind of microcosm of humanity as a whole is concentrated in that show. But the whole idea that everyone has an agenda, everyone knows what the end goal is, the same as Arden, get rich, right, and increase your power, that sort of thing. But to sort of reinforce what you might want to start looking at, though, is that eventually you have to place your trust eventually, right? You know what I mean? With the knowledge that you're all working towards, eventually you're going to have to disband and move toward your own agenda. But there are certain points along that path where you have to make these alliances of convenience so that you can both move forward. I think you can take that lesson and move in and apply that to Arden Bull, I think, in a very successful manner if you do it.
Totally agree. And Matt, right before you go, I want to say one thing because I want to emphasize trust is an interesting word here, right? Because what we're discussing is not faith or trust. What we're discussing is allegiance, right? So when you're saying at some point you have to place that trust, what I would say is at some point you have to make an allegiance. You cannot be an independent contractor forever. In the game of Survivor, to use that analogy, right? There's only so long that anyone can go without being part of an alliance. And those alliances are all both externally and internally antagonistic, and people don't like each other within them, but they understand that their survival is predicated upon them. At no point is that about trust, because the way we think about trust is about meeting someone who has a moral position. I don't think anyone in the world of Art of Vol has a moral position, or an immoral position, right? As the beastmen, who we assume immediately are enemies, are not necessarily. It's about the information we have and the way that we traffic with the people that give it to us. And so, yes, when we're talking about maybe we'll have an allegiance with the goblins, it's not because the goblins are good. It's because like where we are at this point makes them the safest, maybe not safest, but one of the safer allegiances. And once we do that, we've committed down a path that frames us with them. That may fuck us over in a lot of ways, but it has less to do with like the objectivity of the characters.
And what you should be proud of too is that potential with the goblins you forged, which is really cool that you guys did that.
Matt, go.
So
go ahead, Matt.
What I was going to say on the question of trust, because it's interesting that you frame it in a moral context, because the way that I've been looking at this is very much not that, because I understand everybody here's a scumbag. Everybody here is in it for the money, more to a more or less degree. Some people are in it for power, but the place where trust is still a goal is when you trust somebody in as far as you know their motivations and you know what they want.
100%.
Right. Yeah. And the way that
100%.
you can form these alliances and feel, trustful in an alliance is when you think that you can really trust what this person wants.
Yep.
Right.
100%.
Like the way I always try to think about it is like, okay, these factions, like what do the goblins want? The goblins are fecund. They want to expand and find new places to be, right? What does Garalad's faction want to do? He wants to protect, right? He wants to hold on to what he has and protect and keep everything out. So as long as with these new factions, as long as you can know what they want, that's the degree to which you can trust them.
Yep.
And that's leverage you have. So what I would say then is like, perfect example.
Go, Mike. Where the survivor thing breaks down. In the survivor thing that you guys are talking about, everybody has one goal. And no matter how tight your alliance is, eventually you're going to have to splinter because you all have to be the winner.
It's a zero-sum game.
It's Arden Vul, right? Arden Vul, it's Garalad or it's the goblins. The goblins are probably playing like Survivor, where they want to be the only power in Arden Vul. Which
I think everyone wants that, though, is the thing.
No, but Garalad doesn't seem to want to be the power that we know of, according to his like way of doing things, right? I mean, the thing is that's interesting is that Arden Vul's history goes back, 800-900 years in its current status, right?
Even further,
And no one faction has managed to dominate the entire place, which seems to tell me that somebody or the majority of them that are out there, conquest of the all thing is not their overwhelming goal. Go ahead, dude.
Here's what I'll say, because I know what you mean, yes, but we have more information than we're in here. So a few thoughts, right? I agree with Matt, which is, I'll try to be very quick. I agree with Matt, right? Trust is predicated on what people want. The goblins' desire, as far as we know it, this is the thing, we still haven't talked to the leader, which is the case with all of these things. So when you say I'm overly paranoid, what I'm saying is like, we haven't actually gotten all the information and we can act on what information we have, but it isn't certainty, right? So using today's example, we meet this guy. We know what he wants vaguely. We don't know why he wants it, and he doesn't want it for himself. He wants it for someone called the Master, of whom we know nothing about.
To be clear,
sounds incredibly anonymous. What's that?
He was very clear to say for me and for the Master, just so we.
Yes. Sorry. Yeah. But so like that's great. We now can trust that he has something that's valuable to him, but we cannot trust that the action he wants to take upon that item is going to help us or hurt us. What we do know is that what we have is incredibly rarefied within this space. And what we also know, right, to tie it into Garalad and Lady Alexia, is that the cult of Arden, where we just were, which is, again, maybe I'm biased, but probably the single most valuable area we could be in this entire dungeon so far, was a source point that the literal regent of town wanted and was employing multiple people, including Isocrides and Garalad, to try to ferret out for her. And this other guy is vaguely related to these sorts of phenomena. And we know there are alien ships down there. So when we talk about a single unified goal, what we're really talking about is power, right? And the goblins may not be aware of it in the way that like Alexia is, but everyone is diving towards the esoteric power that is at the quote unquote heart of Arden Vul. And we know, having literally transported ourselves to an aspect of that heart, that it might also be adjacent to an alien technology. That isn't that vague anymore. In other words, like when we ask about what factions want, the Cult of Set's probably right there with them, right? And in fact, it's at the top of the long stair, which isn't quite far from that area. So like holding on to that, like the Cult of Arden level and Camino Cheese, whatever the wizard guy's name is,
Priscus Pulcher.
Like those in terms of what we discovered so far, and Isocritus' library prior to that are, because we know information is king and we know there's more to this than meets the eye. All the surface level factional conflict is like frivolous to us, right? It's meaningless at this point because we know there's something more. And we literally, our group, as far as we know, with the exception of like the C-Team sword holder that Ren got, maybe one of the few people who've gotten anywhere near these places because all the passages were basically untread. Which means, and never mind the other alien ship behind the other Hall of Heroes that we were the only ones open, which means we hold some of the most valuable information of any of the major factions in this world. And that makes us both incredibly endangered and incredibly powerful to them. So if we go around talking off on it, we're dead, right? Like, this is why I was
I'm never advocating telling people about the spaceship stuff.
No, but that's what I'm getting at, right? That's why, like, for instance, when we came first out of the Garrett scenario and we had all these retainers with us, I was like fixated on the end. I was like, we can't let these out of we have to figure out a way to keep them with us, because if they go to Alexia, they go to the Five Fingers, or whoever the fuck they go to, at that point it was Dalton, they have something that is more important than any other thing we're going to see in the dungeon, just as a meta conversation. Probably, I don't know for certain, but David speculating, probably more valuable than what we will see in the next 20 sessions of the game at that time.
Yeah,
right?
the darlings getting wasted probably was a good thing for you guys in the end.
Yes, no, it was huge. It was huge for us. It was huge. Best thing that could happen. Right?
That was the whole reason why we set that up.
Oh, is that right?
Exactly.
Yes.
Incredible planning. That's long game sort of shit. Right
no,
now.
I mean, just like I remember very specifically when we were setting that up, that the reason why we wanted to attack and then give that place to Dalton's gang was to tie them down and lock them down.
Very true.
In something that would destroy them, because they would just be, intent on holding this space while we could do whatever we want.
Right.
I think that was your pitch, Matt, and it was brilliant, right? It was brilliant.
And then the fact that they died, but even in that, like, that's why we talked Yost into coming with us, because Yost is the best of us and the best of everyone.
And you wanted to separate Yost from Heliogabalus too. That was a big part of it.
Well, that was the other big one, man. That was huge. Yeah. So it's like, none of this is like, I mean, it's just all very interesting dynamics at play, and we're all sort of triangulating as best we can. But none of it really relates to trust or suspicion per se, in the sense that it is used in common parlance versus like how we're using it in the game, as how we've clarified now, right? Like, that's why I meant the moral thing earlier, is like when we think about trust and we think about like alignment, conversation in D&D, it's too simple for the social dynamics of a game like Ardenville and OSR. Definitely. They're completely different games at play. They literally could not be more different experiences, right? Like, because then it's, I don't know, that's it. Yeah.
One thing I wanted to bring up that was not on this topic at all is that it feels very difficult to try and switch to a different team in the middle of a session.
It's tough.
It has been tough. There's not much more.
We love everybody we're playing. We love it. And we really get into where we are.
I like it because you're seeing all the different things, but it's definitely going to slow down progress as far as mechanical progress. But in the end, like, it's enjoyable to sort of see these three different viewpoints. And to a point of fact, it's like you have very real evidence that you may be closer to reuniting than you think. Right. So you can make that a priority, huge. Right? Yeah. You can shift your, like, that's the priority. Like, you now have a path you're fairly certain of, and you could definitely. Rejoin A and B is a real possibility if you really think, if you plan smartly,
Well, I mean, it's funny. Like, go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say, it just reminds me of a novel where you have like three different POVs going on, and you're switching, and as soon as the chapter switches, you're like, no, and then chapter, you're like, then it switches again, you're like, no.
Yeah, George R. Martin's the master of that, right?
Yeah. No,
I'm just excited because, like, on our own, like, just in our own planning and what we kind of want, our scheming and stuff for B team, it is kind of like pointing us towards the goblins and this area where this is even a possibility. Like that's one of the things that's very much on our, on our likely plan with chasing down Codswallop.
Very looking forward to seeing how B team what B team does next session.
I'm very worried.
I'm doing that again.
I have some sinister ideas myself for sure.
Yeah,
but yeah, I'm terrified we're going to lose everything in that stash. I'll say it again on the record.
Well,
I'm very worried about it because Brother Lothar is by far and away my best character that I have currently. And I don't want him to get eviscerated by the dragon or the mercenaries or anyone else.
If for nothing else, yeah.
Why isn't the assassin with the group of people that need to be murdered, like in their sleep? That would be absolutely perfect. I could go into their camp with a cloak and just kill everybody.
How awesome would Go ahead.
I just to put this out because again, I'm a real stickler. I've said it before. I think I'm more worried about the stash in the end than the stash that Cods is going after. And just to because I can't help myself. You know what reinforces that? We just met an entirely new faction that wants the information that's in a book that's in that room that proves that book's more interesting and valuable as a relational tool than almost any gold we're going to pick up. And that's one of like 20 books we got. What if every one of those books is useful for a different faction in this dungeon?
I can tell you right now, I don't think I'm spoiling anything, that is the case.
Yes, I know.
There is someone in those halls who wants those books.
That's what I'm saying. That library that we stumbled into and somehow like assholes made our way out. Like who knows how? It baffles me. Gave us. I still to this. I mean, again, I'm biased, but I think those resources are like the most precious things we have.
And I do not disagree with you.
A million characters of my own just to protect them.
I don't disagree at all. Yeah. And all these last few weeks, what I've been thinking about is how can we make sure on that B team that we don't lose everything by running around and trying to protect everything. Right.
Exactly.
We got to protect what we have, and I think we have some plans that can do that. And then try to secure a little bit more, right?
Mm-hmm. About everything in that chest in the inn could fit in Leryl's sack.
Almost everything, yeah.
And come with us. So if we're really that worried about it being, lost, what we just need to do is commit to someone carrying Leryl's sack with two hands, throwing all those books and all the jewels and all the rest of that stuff in there, and just what?
Read the Discord. Read the plan that's on the Discord.
Plans are in motion.
That's all you got to do.
I was extremely busy today.
But Mike's thinking along the right lines, though.
Mike didn't take common when he rolled.
No. Mike was busy today and had a life.
You know what, Mike? You know what? You're inspiring to me. You're brilliant. These are brilliant ideas, and I'm going to.
If anyone had thought about it before.
I'm going to write that down.
Okay.
I love this. Let's all bully Mike now because
bring it on.
I'm going to leave us there with bullying.
There we go.